Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we will be looking at pseudocode. Alright, so what we will be doing today, we will be writing a pseudocode. The question that we will be using for this tutorial is the same question that we have been using for our database, our web page, and our word processing tutorials. If you did not watch those tutorials, please click on the link at the top right hand corner. Now, let's get right into the meat of the matter. So, the problem statement here, right, as I said before, relates to what we have been doing in the previous tutorials. All right. So, this is the problem statement that we have at hand. So, you are asked to develop a flowchart or a pseudocode that accepts the following as input for an unknown number of students. Now, your student should have an ID, first name, middle, and last name, the amount of subjects that they're doing, the number of oral subjects that they're doing, and the number of practical subjects that they're doing. These are the information that will be needed to be placed within the pseudocode or requested by the user. Now, the pseudocode should calculate the total due based on the values in the spreadsheet section task B, which is a section done in a previous tutorial as well. The scholarship status, right? If the student is doing 8 or more subjects, and the algorithm should have the option to add a student, view all the students that were added, and a view summary data section that would have the total collected and the total scholarships given. Then you should have an exit option as well. But before we get into the pseudocode, we must first have an IPO chart. And I hope that you all remember what an IPO stands for, right? Now, IPO stands for input, processing, and output. Very simple, all right? Now, this chart typically allows you, right, to organize the information that is needed, right, to go into the pseudocode, all the calculations that will be done, and what will be displayed on the screen. Now remember, a pseudocode is not the actual source code. All right? The prefix pseudo means fake. So a pseudocode is typically a fake code. All right? Just a code that will let you understand what exactly you are going to do when you are going to write your source code. Now, the source code that we will be doing for this pseudocode will be in the programming language Pascal. Many persons stop using Pascal for a very long time right now, but that's the programming language that we will be using for the source code. All right, for the pseudocode, sorry. So stay tuned for that tutorial, which will be coming in a few days. All right, so let us look at the input processing and output section. What is needed, right, for the problem statement? We need the student ID. We need their first, middle, and last name. And we need the total number of subjects that they are doing. And out of the total number of subjects that they are doing, we need to know how many practical subjects are there and how many oral subjects that are there. When I talk about practical subjects, I'm talking about subjects such as technical drawing, physical education, those type of subjects. And number of oral subjects would be some form of language subject such as French or Spanish, right? Good. Then we look at the processing, what needs to be calculated. So we need to calculate the total fees charged to the students. We need to determine the sponsorship status, right? Whether they are qualified for a sponsorship or not. Calculate the overall amount collected. So every single one of the fees, right, that will be charged to the student, we should have an overall amount of it, right? Calculate total students receiving a sponsorship. So if you add 30 students, we need to know how many students out of that 30 will receive a sponsorship or scholarship, whichever you want to use. All right. Now, on the output side, now, what needs to be displayed is the student ID, the student name, the number of subjects, the number of orals, the number of practicals, whether they are getting a scholarship or not, the amount of fees that they actually paid, right? The overall fees collected from each student or that specific student, and the amount of scholarships that was given. All right, good. Now that we have looked at the IPO chart and we know exactly what we need, what will be calculated, and what should be displayed, we're going to move on to the rest. So let's go. So this is the pseudocode. All right, this is the pseudocode, and if you look, right, we have start, not begin. As I said to you before, this is a pseudocode and not a source code. Don't get it twisted. So we have set registration fee, but I have reg fee to 2,500. So we are initializing, right, these constants with a value, right? And the reason why we are declaring the constants first is because by the rule, when doing a Pascal, constants should be declared before variables. And if you realize, there is a value assigned to each constant name. And that is because a constant that is initialized to a specific value, it does not change. That means that everywhere you see reg fee within this pseudocode, right, the value equates to $2,500. The same for subject fee, the same for practical fee, and the same for oral fee. All right, good. Now, once we have declared all the constant that we need, we are going to move on to the variables. All right. Now remember, please do not change the values for these constants. All right. Now, most persons may see reg fee and may not know what that actually is. And that's the reason why we will be creating a data dictionary. A data dictionary will typically tell a person what each value, what each constant and variable name actually is. Right? There will be a tutorial on that, so please wait for that one as well. All right, let's move on. So remember, constants are declared before variables. All right? And the values for the constants does not change. Moving on, we are at the variables now. Subject, practicals, and oral. They are in an array. They are in an array size of 30, and they are an integer. So the reason why they are in an array is because instead of having a section for subjects only, and a section for practicals only, and a section for orals only, you use an array which will store a number of variables. However, if you are using an array, right, to store a number of variables, they must be of the same data type. So the subjects, practicals, and orals are all integers. And that's the reason why I can put all of these into the same array, right? The size of the array is 30 is because the question is required that we add 30 students. So that is the reason why the size of the array is 30. All right, good. Now, student ID, SID, the data dictionary will let persons know what each one of my variable names stands for. All right. Now, SID, F name, M name, L name. So Student ID, first name, middle name, last name. That's my variable. And I put those in an array as well, right? Size of 30. And all of these variables, the data type for all these variables is a string, as you can see right here, right? And let me repeat myself once more. When you are using an array and storing a list of variables, make sure they are the same data type. If they are not the same data type, then the information will not be outputted the right way, and you may end up having errors. All right, moving on. Then we have the registration, the subject fee, the practical fee, the oral fee, and the total fees. Those are placed in an array as well. And the data type for all these are real. And remember, real, right? Just a little quick run through. Real represent negative or positive decimal, right? And string is a character of words, or I shouldn't use the word character, a series of words, right, or text, as long as it is 2 or more, right? Integers are negative or positive whole numbers. All right, then we have sponsor and an array of size 30, right? And it is the only variable that is the data type of a character. In Pascal, we say char. All right, and a character is a single letter symbol. All right, and the reason why the sponsor is declared as a character is because in the pseudocode it will show either yes or no with Y or N, right? Y, the person will get a sponsor. N, they won't get a sponsor. All right, then we have count, choice, print, sponsor underscore count as integer, right? The count is what is used to count how many students each time the user add a student, right? The choice will be for the menu section where there will be a menu where different options will give the user choices to select from, right? Then have a print, how many students needs to be how many students, certain information needs to be printed, sorry, and the sponsor count, how many students will receive a sponsor. And all of those are declared as integers, and as of such, they are there as an integer. All right, good. And no, they won't be in an array, all right, because this information is not required for all 30 students, all right? And the total collected will be declared as real. So count, there we initialize all these to 0, right, before the program actually starts calculating. So the count will be declared as 0, right? And once the first student information is inputted and start to process, then that count will move up to 1. And when you add another student, it moves to 2, and so forth and so forth. Choice is initialized as 0 because from the get-go of the program, the user would typically have to select a choice first. So we have to put it at 0. Print because nothing has printed as yet until the program reaches the point where something needs to be printed. The sponsor count is the same. There's no form of execution or processing as yet. So we need to initialize it as 0. And nothing has been calculated as yet. So total collected is initialized as 0. All right. So we're going to start off with a loop, right? And the reason why we are starting off with a loop is because we are creating a menu option. All right. And let us take a quick look at the question, right? Where it says the algorithm should have the options, operative word, options, right? Options to add student, view. So we need to create 4 options to add students, to view students, to view summary data, and to exit. These are 4 options that we need to have. Let us go back here. So these are our 4 options, as you can see. right? So I have a comment there, so it is easy for you to understand what exactly I am doing here, right? So this is the start of the loop. So first thing, we use an output statement because write is an output statement which will show whatever text is there in front of it, the user on the screen. So it's an output statement to show whatever you want to show on the screen. All right, please remember that. So write, press 1 to enter a student because the algorithm said that we should have the option to add a student. So that's the first section. Press 1 to enter a student, right? You can even have to enter a student, press 1. You don't have to write it the way I write it, right? And students, please remember that your variable names, your constant names should not be the same as mine, right? This is mine. This is mine, mine, mine. Your constant and variable names should be different. And I will demonstrate how you actually would do that. All right, good. Then we have right, press 2 to view all students, right, press 3 to view summary, and right, press 4 to exit. Right, enter option. Now, all the text or statements that comes after each one of those right will be displayed on the screen. All right, and depending on what option you choose, it depends on what will be executed next. All right, good. Now I have read choice. Now read is an input statement. Now think of this analogy, right? Write is when you write a sentence on a piece of paper so that it can be seen, and read is typically when you read something and the information is stored in your brain, right? So read is an input statement when you put something in your brain, and write is an output statement when you write out what is in your brain on a piece of paper. I hope you get what I'm saying. So read choice, what happens here now is that depending on the choice that the user selects, that input statement read will store, right, the choice that was selected by the user. Now we are going to have some condition statements, if then, right, which will determine what happens depending on which option the user chooses, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now look at it now. We already know conditions. If the choice of the user is 1, then, right, they would have to enter a student's ID number. As you can see, right is there. And read will store what that ID number is. And that is the reason why you have SID there, right here, right? Because remember, we had declared SID right here as a string, which will be the student ID number. Now, if you change the variable name SID here to, for example, STU underscore ID, you will do the same thing here and change it to STU underscore ID. So everywhere SID is within the pseudocode, right? You need to change it as long as you change it at the top where you declare your variable. All right. Now count is there, which is to monitor how many times the student is added, right? It will be storing every time you add a student, it will store that student. So it will store how many times this student, the first student that's going to be added is. So that is how it's going to register and monitor how many students in total over a period of time when we get to that section. So that's the reason why count is there. So you're going to see count a lot of times, but it is there to store how many times that section is executed. All right, moving on. So when the student ID is entered by the user, read will store that student ID, right? Then the student's first name will be entered and read will store the student's first name. When the student last name is entered, read last name will store that student's last name. Same thing for middle name, same thing for the total subjects, same thing for the total practicals, same thing for the total orals. All right? And registration, all right, which is the registration fee, and that registration fee is up here. And remember what I said to you, anywhere you see reg fee in this pseudocode, the value equates to 2,500. So down here, this registration for this student accounts to 2,500. All right. Now we reach to the point this is considered an assignment statement where the value on the right, becomes a part of the variable on the left. All right. So the calculation done on the right, will be equated to the value of what is on the left. So subjects, so if they are doing, for example, 5 subjects, and the subject fee, which is a constant, which I already declared what it is, right here, 3,500, right? So if they're doing 5 subjects, it is 5 times 3,500, right? And the answer for that, right, will become the subject fee for that student. So anything that is calculated on the right-hand side, right, it will be assigned, right, to what is on the left. So 3,500 times 5, whatever the answer is, will be assigned to subject fee. Now subject fee for this student becomes the answer of what is on the right. So for example, practicals, if they are doing 1 practical, the practical fee, right, up here is 1,500, 1,500. If here we are. So 1 times 1,500 gives you 1,500. So automatically, prac fee, which is here, becomes 1,500. The same thing is done for oral fee. Same thing is done for total fee. And the calculations are here. So the registration, which is what this will be assigned to this, right? Sub fee, right, which is this. After this is calculated, practical fee, remember we did our practical fee and it was 1,500 because it's 1 practical, so 1 times 1,500, you get 1,500. This 1,500 will go here because it would have been assigned to prac fee here. And then the oral fee, if they're not doing any oral fee, it is with 0. And then it would add every single one of these, and then you get the total fee that that specific student will have to pay. All right? And then the total collected plus the total fee will give you total collected. Good. Then we have a if then else, right? Within that if then, because remember the question says that, because we remember when doing your pseudocode or your program, you are doing it in response to the question asked. Right here, it says scholarship status if a student does 8 or more subjects. So we need to know if they do 8 or more subjects. So this is the reason why that if then, is there, if then else, rather. So if subjects, which would be the amount that would have been inputted when the user is adding the student. So if subjects, so for example, subjects is 5, is greater than or equal to 8, then sponsor, we're going to count sponsor equal to Y. And that's the reason why sponsor was declared as a character. Here it is, as a character, because we're using Y or N. Good. So, yes, sponsor equal Y, sponsor underscore equals sponsor underscore. Sponsor underscore count equals sponsor underscore count plus 1. And the reason why that is because sponsor underscore count was initialized as 0 at the beginning of the program. Let me just carry you back down memory lane. Here it is. Sponsor count equal to 0. And because this will be our first student, if they receive a sponsor, then that 0 plus 1, right, is what the program will use to add how many students will receive sponsors out of the 30, because that is something that needs to be displayed. The IPO chart shows that the amount of person getting a sponsorship should be displayed. However, if they are not doing 8 or more subjects, else sponsor equal N. So these students, for example, is doing 5 subjects. So their sponsor count won't equal to Y, and the sponsor count won't be added as 1. Right? Their sponsor status would be N, which stands for no. Then you end the if. Now the N if ends this if then else statement. And if you realize I have two N if. This N if ends this if then else statement. Count equal count 1. That count 1 is there. Count plus 1 is there is because we are adding a student. Even though that student is not going to get a scholarship, they were still added. Right? And count was initialized as 0 from the get-go. Just a reminder to refresh your mind. There it is. All right? So, because we need to make sure that it is 30 students. All right? So every time the student is added, this will execute to count how many students it is. Right? Student information entered. And that statement will be displayed on the screen. End if. Now, this end if ends this if then. All right? And remember your if then else and your if then needs to end before you move on to something else. All right, so now that we are finished with option 1, which is the other student, we are moving to option or choice 2. All right, so if the person selected option or choice 1 and they add a student and another user is using the system and they select choice 2, this is what's going to happen in the program. If choice equal to, then, right, because choice 2, right, is view all students. All right, so if choice 2, then for print equal 1 to count do, right, which is to view. And print is a statement used to view the student or students that were added, right? That were added. So remember that I had changed my student ID at the top, and I'm seeing it here again as SID. So I'm going to change it to STU underscore ID, right? So what this is going to do right here, remember this is an output statement, right? It's an output statement. The student ID will be displayed, the first name will be displayed, the last name will be displayed, the middle name, the subject or subjects that they are doing will be displayed. The practicals that they are doing will be displayed. The number of orals that they are doing will be displayed. The total fees that they need to pay will be displayed. And whether or not they qualify for sponsorship will also be displayed. And then this for loop will end for, right here. and then we end the end if, which is the choice 2. And that's it for choice 2. Typically, displaying what was added in choice 1. That's exactly what choice 2 is doing. Then we move on to choice 3, right? Which is a summary information that needs to be displayed. So if the choice equals 3, then write total collected, and this total collected, this variable, right, will display the amount of money collected previously when the user would have added the students from choice 1. Write total sponsors given. It will show how many students got 8 or more subjects, right, and receive a Y, which stands for yes, for the sponsorship. So if out of the 30, because remember we use an array of 30 students, as I said before, because we use an array of the size 30 because we are adding 30 students. Out of that 30, for example, if 15 got 8 or more subjects, it means that 15 will be sponsored, right? And this would display 15, right? Once choice 3 is executed, the end if ends, right? Then while choice equals 4, this is the end of the loop. And remember, choice 4 is to exit. And we would have completed all 4 choices required by the algorithm, all 4 options. As it said, algorithm should have the option to add, view summary, and exit. And we just reached the final section of that. And then you have stop. All right. Now let me repeat myself. I said it before, but just a reminder, when you are doing your pseudocode, if you're using mine as an example, please use different constants, variable names, all right? And your output statements can be different as well. You don't have to have press 1 to enter a student. You can have to enter a student, press 1 or select 1 and so forth, right? These can be changed as well. You have to have count, you can have A, you can have B, you can have, instead of choice, you can have select, you can have option, right? So you can do, instead of having sponsor count, you can have spon underscore count, right? Or you can have S underscore count, right? For total collected, that can be changed as well. Total underscore collected, total underscore collect, and so forth and so forth. Use your imagination. Now that is the end of our pseudocode for our problem statement. All right. The next tutorial will be on our data dictionary. Have a wonderful day, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more tutorials like these. If you want to see the tutorials that we mentioned before that relates to this question, you can click on the top right hand corner of your screen. All right, remember this is eTech Jamaica. Have a wonderful day.